Welcome to a new video in my home automation series, and as you can see today I'm reviewing another Shelly product, and this time this is the Shelly Duo, which is the Wi-Fi lamp white light bulb from Shelly. And actually I have to look up the Shelly's website because this is not particularly a new model, but up until now I was testing more of the the actuator type of small devices that are usually hidden behind the switches. This is the first one I'm looking at, a lamp, so I'm probably just going to overlay some information of what other light or lamp products are available from Shelly. But this is a 9-watt E27, so this screw type LED bulb, and this is rated at 800 lumens, so 9 watt 800 lumens. I think that corresponds to the 60 watt incandescent lights that we used to, so that's the same amount of light or same amount of brightness that you get out of these lamps. But the other main thing about this one, as you can see it here, it supports white light and cool lights as well. So the light temperature ranges from 2700 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvins. And of course, just like with any Shelly products, you are getting Wi-Fi access, so 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. You can remotely, well, obviously turn the device on and off. You can control it through an app. There are all sorts of APIs that are provided, so you can control it through any smart home automation system. There is a Shelly integration for Home Assistant, and you can use REST APIs or MQTT control it node ready if you want to. But the app itself supports remote monitoring, schedules, so you can set times on and off, sunrise sunset calculation, of course, change the brightness and change the color temperature of the light. And also there are some nice, small features that I found with Shelly that I haven't seen with any other manufacturer, for example, Blitzwolf or Sonoff. So for example, there is a night mode. Of course, there is built-in auto off and auto on functionality, and a few others that we are going to see later in this video. And before I forget to mention, most of the Shelly products are universal voltage, so they work from 95 to 240 volts, but this bulb is from 220 to 240 volts, so this product wouldn't be suitable in the US. Or it even says that explore it in the Huawei app gallery. Well, I haven't seen this logo before. Of course you have the logo for the Apple Store and the Google Play, but now it seems like that manufacturers are also putting stuff onto the Huawei app gallery. And in the box, obviously, you're receiving your light bulb, and you also get the user's manual. The user manual contains the usual Shelly details, so it's like a double-sided single-page leaflet, but it is on a single language. So all the details that you see here are contained in English, and there are details here on how you set it up in the Shelly app and how you control it, and also some technical details. But I mean, you just screw it into like an E27 socket and you are good to go. And when you power it for the first time, it's going to go into pairing mode immediately. So you will see that the light bulb starts flashing. That's how you know that it's in pairing mode. And if you need to get into pairing mode for any reason in the future, then you just need to power cycle it 5 times. So turn the power on and off 5 times, and then it will go into pairing mode again. And I think that should be enough for a review. Let's hook it up and see how it actually performs in the app. Okay, as you can see, I have my test board set up, and I have the Shelly 1PM up here and the 2.5, and of course the bulb is down here. And I think I'm going to use the i3 to set up a couple of scenarios, how you can use some of the other Shelly devices to control the LED. And as you can see here on the left, I already have the device configured, so I can see the Duo now in my list of devices. And as you can see, it shows that it is actually on, and it is on at 19%, and it's consuming 0.32 watts. So this is something that I forgot to mention right in the beginning, but it also contains the power measurement. So the device measures its own power by default, so you don't need a separate 1PM or other power measurement devices to know how much power is consumed by this lamp. So I think that's a nice thing. I mean, obviously, that it runs 9 watts when it's on full brightness. But I think it's interesting to see how much the power consumption goes down as you start, lowering the brightness. But let me just go back and then just highlight one other feature. So we have seen this one, that all the power measurement units, by default, they report the power measurement, or basically roll up the power measurement to a room that they are assigned to. But what we can see here is that there is also this light indicator. So in the small picture above, it also shows that, well, there is a light installed in the room and that light is on. So, and to be honest, this is the first bulb type or, lamp type of product from Shelly. So I haven't seen that in the past. Going back to the individual control, you can see that, well, we have a power button here. So I can operate the switch from here, and there is a short fade in, fade out effect when I turn it off, so it doesn't switch immediately off. And when I go into the device details, then, well, you see the same power button up here. You see there you also have an icon for the lamp. Of course, I choose this bulb icon when I assign the device to the room, but you can just pick any other stuff. And you have the basic controls. So you have the brightness and the temperature value. You also have data about the power consumption. So, well, I just only received it a couple of days ago, so I don't have a full lot of history, but you can see the power consumption, like, weekly, monthly, yearly, and of course, done in the individual days, and then you can just zoom into the various hours, so you can see how much power the light bulb is consuming. And actually the other nice feature that I do like is, even if the light is off, you can operate the sliders. So, let's say for Sonoff, if the light is off, these controls are disabled. So if I know that I want to turn this light on at 27% and sort of like, 4000 Kelvin, I can set these and then finally turn the lamp on. Instead of doing the other way around, that you start messing with the brightness when the light is on. I don't think it's a big thing, but actually I think it makes sense. For example, if you're using the LED light at full brightness and then you want to turn it on in the evening, well, now you can just, well, first of all, reduce the brightness and then turn it on. So it's not going to come on at, full power. So that's a nice, small details. And as you can see, if I go up, oops, and as you can see that as you move the slider, then the current power consumption updates. And of course, if I move it to 100%, well, the camera is going to auto gain all the time. But as I go, 100%, you can see that the power consumption goes up to 9 watts. And even if you reduce by 50%, that's probably 50% of the brightness. But in terms of power consumption, it's going to be much less than, 50%. And I don't think I need to explain this, the temperature slider a lot, because, well, you have the 2700 Kelvin, which is a, very rich orangey, like almost candlelight color. And of course, on the other end, you have the 6400 Kelvin, which is like very, almost like a bluish kind of white. I just like to go in between, like, I don't know, 4500, 4600, something like that. So these are the main controls. And I mentioned about the power consumption again. So yeah, you can have the power consumption and then you have the usual settings. So I think let's go through the settings. First of all, let's go through some of the features and then actually go into the, the device settings and the application settings. So the first is the timer. So here you can specify whether you want the device to automatically turn on or turn off. So you have to enable it and then you set the seconds. So if you specify auto on, then, if the device is turned off, then it automatically turns on after 30 seconds. Probably the other feature that you would use is the auto turn off. So you just need to turn the lamp on and it will automatically turn off after a set amount of time. The next one is the schedules. By default, the schedules are not enabled, so you have to enable it, and then you can add schedules. And the schedule itself is, well, you specify a time, I don't know, let's say, 8 o'clock, and yep, and then you can even set the brightness to what brightness it should come on, like 70%, and I don't know, maybe like a little bit warm, and then action is actually turned on, and okay, set number of durations, and then which days of the week. So it is very similar to the type of schedules that we see with many other devices. Of course, the extra feature here is that for each schedule, you can specify the brightness, the color temperature, and the actual state. So this is also quite nice that this got added, not just a simple on-off, because you can, set up some nice schedules. Like, if you have a light which is usually on during the evening, you can create like a nice effect that it automatically goes into like a warmer temperature as you go into the night. So maybe that will also give you an indication how much time you have just by, observing whether it's like a cooler light or a warmer light. But anyway, you have these features, and of course you can also set these lights to automatically fade as you go into the evening. If you don't want any of this functionality, you can just disable. And of course, by the way, you can have many of these different schedules. So, but that's all about schedules. I don't want to use it now, so I disabled it. Okay. And we also have the night mode. And in the night mode, you can specify that in between these certain hours, you want to set the brightness to 20%. And the way it works is that, let's say I set the light to 59%. I turn it off. If I turn it on, well, it comes on at 59% because it's not 6 o'clock yet. But if I do this again, and if I go back to the night mode and I actually enable and I just move it to 5 p.m. So now that you can see that the night mode is enabled from 5, so we are in the night mode now. So if I turn it on, it actually reduces the brightness down to 20%. You can still bring it up to whatever percent that you want to, but then when you turn it on, it will always cap it down to 20%. So you don't accidentally increase the brightness too much if that's what you want. So I think it's a nice feature, and it's sort of quite intelligent the way it works, and it still allows you manual control if you want to override it, but by default, whenever you turn on the light, it will cap the brightness at 20% or whatever percent that you set. So that's night mode, and you can just enable or disable it. So I think these will be the light bulb specific settings, and now we can look at the rest of the application settings. And these are going to be very much similar from what we have seen with other devices. So if you don't want the logging for this device, you can exclude it from the logs. And in the internet security options, you can set what Wi-Fi it connects to. You can also set up a backup Wi-Fi. You can enable the access point mode. To be honest, I'm not sure why you would do that. Once you have set it up, you don't really need that. You can restrict login, just like with any other devices. This Shelly device also creates its own web server, so you can add a username and a password to that web server, and you can specify whether you want this unit to be enabled in the cloud or not. For the demonstration purposes, I wanted to use the Shelly app, so I enabled the cloud access. But if you are integrating it with, let's say, Home Assistant or Node-RED, you don't need a cloud access, so you can just access the device locally. You can also share the device, so if you have multiple, Shelly users, if you have one account for each of your family member, you can share the device to them, and you can keep certain devices and only share some of others to your significant other or for the rest of your family. And finally, within settings, we have a few more settings about the device. So we have a power on mode. So if the device receives power, what should be the default state? I think it would make sense if it's off or to the last settings or the last mode. And a couple of other things. So the transition time you can specify by default is 1000 milliseconds. So that's the, turning on and turning off, fade in, fade out effect is 1000 seconds. I tried increasing it to a higher value, and I noticed that the transition becomes less smoother. So yeah, just play around with that. And for that reason, I reset it to 1000 because I think that looks, visually okay, and I don't need that to be, B anymore anyway. You can also update the firmware. You can specify some sync names, geolocation, you do factory reset or reboot, and also get device information. For example, what's the IP, what Wi-Fi it is connected to. But yeah, one thing that probably you're going to use most is, differently visit is the power on mode. And then maybe if you want to play around with the transition time. And I think we have pretty much discussed what the device can do and how the device can be configured. But we have one more option, is these I/O URL actions. And here you can specify URLs that the device, so the lamp itself, should call whenever it's turned on or off. And I think you can certainly use these if you want to, for example, sync bulbs together. So let's say if you have two bulbs, and then the one bulb, you know, when the first bulb is turned on, then it tells the other bulbs to also turn on. So your switch is only controlling one of the bulbs, and that bulb is controlling the others. So you can certainly do that. I haven't, you know, found any use of it in my specific setup. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use these I/O actions or I/O URL actions and configure it on the i3 to control my LED lamp. So I'm going to use the same functionality but on another Shelly device. So that's one way of integrating that. I think it's probably the, you know, one bulb controlling other bulbs is the best example to do that. And once we get there, you will see how you can set up these URL actions. And also want to mention about the scenes. Oh, sorry, not this one, but the scenes. So if I go out, I can just quickly create a scene and show you what you can control, how you can control this light bulb using the scenes. So this is the sort of like the cloud automation recipes. So first of all, you specify a condition, and if I look at the Duo, it basically has two conditions: if the light bulb is turned on or the light bulb is turned off. Well, fair enough. Actually, let me just pick something else. One of the other Shellys, because I also want to do what we can do on the action side. So what you can do with the bulb itself, and if I pick the Duo again, we have a few options. So first of all, we have state changes. So we can use we can use scenes to turn on or turn off the Duo. And we can also do that with the brightness. So we want the lamp to turn on at a specific brightness. For some reason, we can't control the color temperature, but we have the brightness. So let's say you can have, I don't know, you have two switches in the house, and if you turn on one of the switch, that will turn on the Shelly at, let's say, you know, 50%, and your other switch will turn it off, turn it on at 100%. So you can do that with scenes easily. So using scenes, you will be able to integrate Shelly devices together. So let's say if I have this switch, so I can configure a scene that if I turn on this switch, that would turn on my Shelly Duo, but I can do that with URL actions as well. And if you want to do it with scenes, that's a little bit easier because you can just, you know, pick options on your phone the way that I've just done before. The drawback of the scenes is that it is executed on the cloud. So it works fine, but if your internet goes down, those scenes will not work. And the other option you have is to use the I/O URL actions that I just mentioned before, and you can set that up pretty much the same way as well. But then in that case, let's say your i3 is going to talk directly to your Duo over to the local network. So that is, well, first of all, it's most probably going to be faster. Maybe it's not going to be significantly faster, but it should be faster because it's a local communication. And of course, because it's a local communication, it will work all the time, regardless if you have active internet connection or if you don't. And here I've configured the i3 so that the first input or the first button of the i3 works as a toggle switch. So just like a regular old switch. So if you turn it off, it goes off. If you turn it on, you turn it on, then the lamp goes on. But the second switch is configured as a momentary switch. And well, to be honest, I don't have a momentary switch at the moment. So I'm just going to, you know, do this like this. That's how I'm going to simulate the momentary switch. And what I've configured here is that, you know, within the i3, you can specify actions, what happens on a short press or a long press or double press or triple press. So what I've configured is that on a short press, it will change the color temperature to 24,000 Kelvin. And if I do a long press, it will change the color temperature to 6,500 Kelvin. And you can see that it gets updated in the app. So now you have used an i3 that controls your lamp, and it also controls the color temperature. The only thing with both the brightness and also the color temperature is you can tell the Shelly Duo to change to a certain color temperature or to change to a certain brightness. you can't tell it to, let's say, increase the brightness or increase the color temperature. At least I haven't found an action. So you can't have that usual functions that if you long press, then it starts to dim or brighten. You can configure, certain preset brightnesses or color temperatures, and you can easily switch to those. So let's see how I configured this scenario. So here we are on my computer, and what I'm going to use here is I'm going to use the built-in web server to configure this integration. I could use my phone as well, but normally you would have to enter URLs here. So I think it's just easier if you are using the computer, and we have a little bit more space, so it's easier to see what's being configured. And by the way, this is how the Shelly Duo's internal website looks like, and it's pretty much the same as the app. The only thing which is missing is the power consumption history, which definitely comes from the cloud, so you only have that in the app, you don't have it on the device itself. But I can control the device from here. I can change the brightness, I can turn it on and off, and I can also do the configuration changes here. But what we're really interested about is the i3, and I'm going to use the the input 1 and the 2 as I showed you just before. And if you remember, the input 1 is configured as a toggle switch, and when you have configured it as a toggle switch, you can define the on and the off URLs. And here I have enabled the on URL, and I specified it to turn on my Shelly Duo, and I've used the off URL to turn the Shelly Duo off. And the way I figured out these URLs are actually very simple. Well, of course, you can just open the Shelly Duo or the Shelly API reference, and then it's going to tell you all the different commands that it supports. If you want to use the REST APIs, how you can do these, how you can do those, and how you can do it on MQTT as well. But actually there is an easier way. So for example, in my Google Chrome, if I press F12, then it brings up the debugger. If I change to the network tab, I can see the messages that are going back and forth between this web page and the actual device itself. And if I do anything, it's going to show you how the web page is communicating with the device. So if I turn it off, you can see that I have a turn off command. It says, the IP of the device /light/0 turn equals on. Sorry, turn equals off. And if I turn it on, then it says turn equals on. And these are the things that I've used here. So all I have done is I basically copied the URL from here and put it into the applicable URL here. Don't forget to enable it, and then you paste in the URL and then you save. So this is the on action and this is the off action. And that's why the Shelly Duo turns on and turns off when I operate the first input of the Shelly i3. And I've done pretty much the same for the second input as well. If you remember, that is configured as momentary. And here I have used the short press URL and the long press URL. But as I mentioned, you have other options here. So 2 times short, 3 times short, long plus short, and short plus long. I guess at some point that would be difficult to remember. And these are configured so it can control the color temperature. And just like before, I move the color temperature slider and I just observe that it sends out this command. So it at the end it says $white equals 7. So the warmest color is white equals 0, and the coolest color is white equals 100. And this is what I've used here. So again, the base URL, and at the end it says $white equals 0. That was the short press, and for the long press, white equals 100. But you could have done it with the brightness as well. So as you can see, if I move the brightness around, I get different URLs. So if I move it all the way here, then I get a URL which says turn on and brightness equals 1. So of course you can combine these. So that would turn on the light at minimum brightness. And if I do this, that would turn on the light with a maximum brightness. So you can combine these together if you want to do that. As I said, the only thing which I haven't figured out how to do is increase brightness or decrease brightness. So you can only set it to a fixed brightness. But you could do this for the 2 short press URLs. So if you double click on that button, then maybe you can set it to full brightness. So by the simple button, you just turn on the light, but if you want to full brightness, you just double click and that will come on at full brightness. So it is very easy to do. So that was my review of the Shelly Duo. If you like this product, you are going to find purchasing links in the video description. But I think that would be all for today. Thanks for watching and hopefully see you in the next video.